Hello everyone, my name is Ashley Pignon and this is my Teach Me project number 3. And for this section I chose to focus on the thoracic cavity, also known as the respiratory system. Throughout my slides I'll be showing models of the human and as well as the cat. And I'm going to start from the structures from the superior to the inferior, so let's get started. The most superior structure of the thoracic cavity is known as the trachea, also known as the windpipe, and the trachea basically needs to be patent for your whole entire life, and it is done so by the rings of hyaline cartilage, as you can see in the picture on the left. The white lines would be the hyaline cartilage that keep it open, and you could also see the rings on the cat on the right. Next we have the esophagus, which is located deep to the trachea. The esophagus is a muscular structure that moves food from the mouth to the stomach through a process called peristalsis, where coordinated contractions of the esophageal muscles push the food downward to your stomach. Next, we have the larynx, and the primary function of the larynx is to protect the lower respiratory tract from aspirating food into the trachea while breathing. It also contains the vocal cords and functions as a voice box for producing sounds. The thyroid cartilage is the largest of the larynx's 6 cartilages and has many functions. One of most is protection. The thyroid cartilage shields the front part of the larynx, including the vocal cords, airway muscles, and membranes, and is also known as the Adam's apple in men. In this picture, we also have the cricoid cartilage, which is located right under the thyroid cartilage, as well as the arytenoid cartilage, which is viewed in the middle picture, which is the posterior view, as well as the epiglottis, which is the teal-like structure that is also on the posterior view, as well as the vocal cords. I know I've mentioned the vocal cords already, but I just wanted to emphasize the superior view of the vocal cord. And again, vocal cords are folds of membranous tissue that project inward from the sides of the larynx to form a slit across the glottis in the throat, and whose edges vibrate in the airstream to produce what we know as our voice. The common carotid artery I have pointed out on the human model and as well as the cat model. The common carotid arteries are major blood vessels that supply oxygenated blood to the head, face, and neck. The internal jugular veins are shown in blue here and have arrows pointing right at them. It extends from the base of the skull to the sternal end of the clavicle, and its function is to drain the venous blood from the majority of the skull, brain, and superficial structures of the head and of the neck. Next, we have the vagus nerve, and my apologies, I couldn't really find a picture on the human model, but I have a good picture of the vagus nerve on the cat. And the vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve that is not only parasympathetic, but also gives motor and sensory supply. It also helps control digestion, heart rate, mood, and even the body's inflammation response. Next, we have the hyoid bone. And the hyoid bone is located in the neck above the thyroid cartilage and has many functions that include speech, swallowing, breathing, head posture, and supports. One interesting thing I found was that the hyoid bone of the cat is actually an H shape, which, now that I know it is, I'll never forget it. So it's something that I think you would never forget either. Subclavian artery lies just below the clavicle and provide blood supply to the upper extremities, with contributions to the head and of the neck. And technically for the subclavian artery, we don't need to know it for the cat, but I'm just showing it just in case. Same thing with the subclavian vein. We only need to know it for the human model and not the cat model, but I still pointed it out for you. And the subclavian vein drains blood from the upper extremities and returns it back to the heart. The axillary artery is a large blood vessel that supplies oxygenated blood to the upper limb, shoulder, axilla, and the lateral aspect of the thorax. And we do need to know this on both the human and the cat. Now we have the axillary vein, which is a large blood vessel that carries blood from the upper limb, axilla, and the lateral aspect of the thorax back to the heart. Now we have the brachial plexus, which is a network of nerves that connect the spinal cord to the arms and hands, carrying sensory and motor signals. The nerves originate from the cervical and upper trunk sections of the spinal cord from C5 to T1 and control muscle function and feeling in the upper limbs, including the chest, shoulders, arms, and hands. Now we have the heart, and I know you know a lot about the heart, so I'm not really going to say much about it. But the main function is to pump blood and oxygen around the body and deliver waste products such as carbon dioxide back to the lungs to be removed. Now we have the aorta, and the aorta is the largest blood vessel in the body. And this artery is responsible for transporting oxygen-rich blood from your heart to the rest of your body. Now we have the superior vena cava, which is a large vein that returns deoxygenated blood from the upper body to the heart's right atrium. The superior vena cava collects blood from many smaller veins, including the jugular veins, brachiocephalic veins, and the subclavian veins. Now we have a structure known as the thymus, which is a small organ in the upper chest that produces and matures immune cells, particularly white blood cells called T lymphocytes or T cells, which are a vital part of the body's immune system, helping to fight infection, tumors, allergens, and pathogens. The next structure that I'm going to talk about is the lungs. And the lungs are the primary organs of the respiratory system, and their main function is to facilitate gas exchange or respiration, which is essential for life. We have inhalation, which is when you inhale, air enters your lungs, and it influences gas exchange, where oxygen from the air moves into your blood, while carbon dioxide, a waste gas from your metabolism, moves from your blood into your lungs. And exhalation, when your diaphragm moves back up, your chest cavity gets smaller, forcing air out of your lungs. Next, we have the diaphragm, which is a large dome-shaped muscle that separates the chest from the abdominal cavity and plays a key role in breathing. And breathing is when you inhale, the diaphragm contracts and moves downward, which increases the space in your chest cavity and allows your lungs to expand. This contraction also creates a vacuum that pulls air into your lungs. When you exhale, the diaphragm relaxes and returns to its dome shape, forcing air out of your lungs. I'm so sorry, I know this is probably really boring for you, but that pretty much wraps up the structures of the thoracic cavity. And now I'll be talking about the histology of it. Okay, so now we have the trachea, and I'm going to be focusing on the image on the right side of the slide. So on the left we have the trachea, and we know it's the trachea because, as I said before, this is supposed to be open for your whole entire life. And it is kept open by the hyaline cartilage. On the right side, it looks like we have a lumen that is collapsed. It has a very strong muscular layer, and that is also known as the esophagus. The mucosal layer is made up of pseudostratified columnar epithelium with cilia on the apical surface. Has plenty of goblet cells that we need to know how to identify. Also has lamina propria under the mucosal epithelium. Under that we have the submucosa, which is seen by the spaces where we find submucosal glands. Now we have the bronchiole, which is the airway that doesn't have hyaline cartilage and is surrounded by smooth muscle. This has a mucosa with simple cuboidal epithelium and simple columnar epithelium and is identified by the smooth muscle around its structure. And lastly, we have the alveoli, or air sacs of the lungs that are lined with a thin layer of simple squamous epithelium, which allows for efficient gas exchange between the air and the capillaries in the alveolar walls. You have finally reached the end of my boring presentation. I hope that you enjoyed it. I also wish you luck on the test and in your future. Don't give up. You got this. Be confident.